Previously on A Love That Lingered, Arthur left for war, torn between duty and devotion, while Grace remained at the manor under Oliver and Lady Caldwell's care. After weeks of illness, Grace learned she was with child, but kept the news hidden from Arthur, choosing instead to let his mind rest, while hers wrestled with the secret. This is episode 27, Whispers in Ink. The manor had taken on a quieter rhythm in Arthur's absence, though quiet was not quite peace. The days stretched into each other with a sameness that was sometimes comforting, sometimes suffocating. Grace rose each morning to the pale light creeping through the tall windows of her chamber, her hand instinctively brushing against the small swell of her belly. A reminder that she was not truly alone. She was 4 months along now, and though her form had changed only subtly, the knowledge of it changed everything in her heart. The house itself seemed aware of the secret, its walls holding her silence with patient loyalty. Lady Caldwell lingered near, tending to Grace's meals and ensuring she rested when the exhaustion set in, though there was little she could do to ease the ache of absence. Oliver became a constant companion, perhaps more restless than even Grace herself. He insisted on distracting her, walks through the gardens when she was able, long evenings in the study with books scattered between them, or just quiet companionship by the fire. Yet, beneath his efforts, Grace could feel his worry simmering like a kettle that refused to boil over. But most of all, it was the letters that marked the rhythm of their days. Nearly once a week, a new one would arrive, bearing Arthur's familiar handwriting across the front. Grace would sit at the desk in her chamber, candlelight glowing soft around her, and press trembling fingers over the seal before breaking it open. Each time, her breath caught. The ink inside became a lifeline, pulling her heart back toward him, even as his words grew heavier with the weight of war. Yet for all her longing, she kept her secret. Every time her quill touched the page in response, she hesitated. She wanted desperately to tell him, to share that a part of him was still here with her, growing steadily each day. But the thought of burdening him, of distracting him when he faced battles she could scarcely imagine, silenced her hand. Instead, she wrote of the weather, of the manor's rhythms, of Oliver's poor attempts at baking, of the snow slowly covering the gardens. Harmless things, tender things, things that would not add to his fear. The stakes, however, were clear. With each letter, it was obvious that the world Arthur had stepped into was growing darker. His tone, once warm and filled with optimism, now carried undercurrents of fatigue, disillusion, and the faint, unspoken shadow of dread. And though Grace smiled when she read them, though she folded the pages gently and placed them in the desk drawer alongside all the others, she could not quiet the whisper that asked how long his words would continue to arrive at all. The letter that arrived on a gray morning in early winter was thinner than most, though the handwriting was just as familiar. Grace settled into the armchair near her window, unfolding the paper as Oliver lingered at her door, trying not to hover too obviously. My dearest Grace, the days blur together here, but I cling to each thought of you as though it were a torch in a cave. The camp grows restless. Supplies are stretched thinner with every passing week. I will not lie and say it is easy. But I remind myself constantly that I am not alone. Every man here fights with someone waiting for him at home. You are my strength, Grace. When the nights are cold, I close my eyes and remember your warmth beside me, and I find I can endure another day. How is the manor faring? Have you taken Oliver's advice to rest? He worries. I know. I hope you allow him to care for you as I would, were I there. Do not let loneliness overtake you. Think of me when the sun rises, for I am thinking of you. Yours always, Arthur. Grace pressed the letter against her lips, closing her eyes. She wanted to tell him everything, that he was not fighting just for her, but for the small life she carried, that his absence was felt doubly now, every moment a test of her endurance as well. But her resolve held firm. She folded the paper and tucked it with the others, then sat quietly until Oliver finally broke the silence. You look worse after reading them, he said softly, his arms crossed, though his expression was more sad than stern. And yet you hoard them as if they're the only breath you can take. They are, Grace whispered, her hand slipping absently to her stomach. Oliver saw, though he pretended not to. He had promised her secrecy after all, though it pained him to keep such a thing hidden from Arthur. You should tell him, he said after a long pause, his voice low. He deserves to know. It would give him hope. Grace's jaw tightened. And what if it gives him distraction? What if, in thinking of us, he falters when he cannot afford to? He would not falter, Oliver argued. Arthur has always fought harder when he has something to protect. Grace turned her gaze to the window, unwilling to meet his eyes. And if that protection is taken from him before he can return? Her words fell like a stone between them, heavy and immovable. Oliver had no answer. Later that evening, Grace wrote her reply. My dearest Arthur, the manor remains as it ever was, though it misses you as I do. The roses have finished for the season. I thought of how you once promised to bring me one, freshly cut each morning. I am saving that promise for your return. Oliver keeps me company, though he is no substitute for you. He makes poor bread and worse conversation, though his loyalty is a balm. I am well, Arthur, truly. My only ache is your absence. Come home safe, and I shall never complain again. Yours always, Grace. When she set down her quill, her hand lingered over the page. Her heart screamed to add the truth. And when you return, you will not meet just me, but your child. But she folded the paper instead, sealing her silence inside the envelope. The emotional shift came that night when Ethel entered Grace's chamber, candle in hand. You will break under the weight of silence, my dear, she said gently, watching her daughter-in-law tuck the latest letter away. Secrets have a way of souring even the sweetest of things. Grace met her gaze, her voice trembling but resolute. If my silence means Arthur keeps his head clear and returns to us, then I will bear the burden. I will not be the reason he falters. The older woman said nothing more, but her eyes were heavy with unspoken grief. In the weeks that followed, Grace's routine continued much the same. The letters arrived, she answered, and the desk drawer filled with proof of their tether across distance. Yet beneath her resolve, the strain began to show. One evening, she lingered at the window long after the sun had set, her hands folded protectively over her belly. Oliver found her there, her profile pale against the dark glass. You'll wear a hole through the horizon if you keep staring at it, he murmured. Grace didn't look at him. Sometimes I imagine I'll see him riding up the lane, just like before. No letter needed, no warning, just him. Oliver swallowed hard. And sometimes you imagine you won't see him at all. The silence that followed was thick, almost unbearable. Grace finally turned, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes. I don't think I'm strong enough for this. Yes, you are, Oliver said, more fiercely than he intended. He stepped closer, his own eyes wet, though his voice held steady. You are carrying a piece of him. That makes you stronger than any of us. Grace's hand pressed against her stomach, the truth sitting heavy in her chest. But he doesn't know. Oliver reached for her hand then, just for a moment, and squeezed it. Then let us hold it for him until he returns. He will know in time. For the first time in weeks, Grace allowed herself to lean against Oliver's shoulder. They stood like that in silence, bound not by romance but by shared grief, by loyalty to the man they both loved in their own ways. The next letter arrived with a trembling seal, the parchment smudged as though the writer's hand had been unsteady. Grace opened it with a pounding heart, Oliver hovering just out of sight. My Grace, I cannot write long. We march tomorrow towards a conflict larger than any we have yet faced. I will not lie, I am afraid. But I carry your name in my heart, and it gives me courage. Pray for me, Grace, pray for us all. Yours, with all that I am. Arthur. Grace pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling freely this time. Oliver stepped forward, his face pale, reading the dread in her expression before she even spoke. He's being sent to battle, she whispered, her voice breaking. The candlelight flickered, as though the house itself shuddered with her words. And for the first time, Grace felt the icy edge of the possibility she had kept locked away, that the drawer of letters might one day end unfinished,